going to start recording now. You should see up at the top that it's recording.
Okay.
And then right next to it, you'll see Facebook has started going live. And at that point, you can share it.
Okay.
Yep.
Will do.
We have had some fun. Zoom makes updates, and they don't do the best job of explaining how that affects pushing to social medias. So you just kind of have to figure it out. So
should I just share from Jeff's post then, from DealerRefresh itself?
No.
Once
this goes live, you'll see.
Yep. Okie dokes.
Yeah, just be ready to mute your browser.
No, I'm gonna share it and then I'm gonna close out of it.
Oh, okay.
Instead of watch it, because that would be way too distracting for me.
Well, I will, as comments come up, questions come up, if I feel they're relevant to the conversation, I'll bring them in.
Perfect.
And don't feel bad, Subi. Every single time I get on Facebook, like during the show, somehow the audio comes on. And then there's this
some notification from somewhere.
Yeah, and then there's this wonderful echo. It's like it never fails.
Yep.
Well, it's not exactly letting me.
It's another reason to
view stream on Facebook. Is that what I should be doing?
Yep, you can do that, and it'll take you right to it.
Yeah.
It is not taking me anywhere. It's just taking me to the home page. All right.
Well, it is up, so we are live. Everyone's watching you.
No pressure.
Yep. So everyone who's watching, Subi is just trying to share things before we get started.
Definitely. Want to make sure that everyone can participate who wants to participate.
Someone's digging your mask collection.
Well, it is up, so we are live. Everyone's watching. There we go.
No pressure. Of course. There we go. Okay.
Well, Subi, thanks for joining us today.
Of course. I'm so happy to be here. I did not know it was International Women's Day until maybe last night when my mother-in-law sent me a text message.
I thought it was all month. I didn't realize there was an actual international day.
Well, there's the
kind
day.
Of a combination of both.
There is. So March is officially Women's History Month, and then March 8th of 2019 is the official day.
Right.
So.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I'm beyond honored that you asked me to be on today. I feel like a representative of women in automotive, and so I'm happy to kind of share anything that I can for that mission as well on a day as important as today.
Well, first off, why don't you just give us a little bit of history of Subi for anyone that's not really familiar with your past?
Yeah, absolutely. I am the Senior Director of Dealer Strategies at Stream Companies now, but I spent the majority of my career on the dealership side, from e-commerce director, and then I worked my way up to sales director as well at a few different groups in a few different regions. And from there, I had an unfortunate event where a new GM came in and wanted to cut the digital advertising and said I was doing a great job, but he needed to put a grill on the roof to attract young kids and their families. So I had about 2 weeks to find a new job because I had just put down for a house, and Dealer Authority came to the rescue. And it was kind of taking all of that experience on the dealership side and then moving that into the agency side. And now I'm with Stream, and I'm pairing all the things that I love together with culture, operations, websites, advertising, and being able to affect many more dealers. So I'm really, really passionate about and very proud of that. And I'm also a founding board member of Women in Automotive. We are in our 6th year and our 5th event this year. Wow. So I'm really happy that we've grown and been able to share this mission of accelerating the role of women in automotive. And that's
what do you do with Women in Automotive?
So I'm a board member.
Okay.
I help put on the shows. I help line up speakers and connect people who need not only mentorship and information, but just sometimes for me, it was difficult to see that there were opportunities for me higher than what I was looking at. And I didn't really see anybody at those levels really high at the top that looked like me. So I didn't think that those were opportunities for me. And it wasn't until the very first Women in Automotive where I just wanted to be a part of something that was speaking to an underserved population. But then that first event, walking in, it was like goosebumps because I realized that there were so many people like me, that not only women, there were men there too that really wanted to talk about inclusivity and just changing the culture overall. So being a part of that, I feel is a very important piece of my life, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. And I think we're making some serious change. There are people that attend the events from both the dealer side and the vendor side that say, we've gone back, we've implemented some of these things, and we're changing the culture at our organizations. And that is something that I will remember forever.
So we had Jody DeVario on last week, and she's on the board with you, right?
Yes, she's one of our leading forces. She's pretty much organizing the entire event herself this year. I don't know how she's doing it, but she is someone who paved the way before people thought it was important enough to discuss. And I respect that so very much.
So with Jody there, and yourself, and I know Christy Roman, who I think is on next week. And
right. Awesome.
Yeah, so it's all women in automotive, like quite literally all month.
Literally.
But who are some of the other big supporters of the conference itself?
I think it would be easy for me to say, the diversity groups within huge companies like Cars.com and Cox, and especially CDK. They've all been really supportive and also incorporated us into some of their diversity things. Kia just had us out at their HQ down in the West Coast to speak to their diversity group. But I think when I really think about supporters, I think about people on the grassroots level, people who volunteered their time and effort, like Bobby Heron, Jennifer Briggs, people like that. But more importantly, it's men. It's people like Joe Webb, Bill Playford, Craig Lockard from AutoMax was an early supporter. We actually have a men's executive council now, and I think it was really cool. We have people like Jared Hamilton, Chip Perry, Justin Bird, all these men that have come to the table and said, okay, we don't know how to, as women in automotive, we don't know how to move this message past people that are wanting to listen. How do we move the message to people that don't even know they have to listen? And this group of men accepted our invitation, came together, and they're having a dialogue with us of how to have this larger conversation. And I am completely baffled by that and appreciative. So I think those would be the greatest supporters that we could ever ask for.
Well, we would like to help.
All right.
So officially on the record now. That's on recording. And you need to take us up on that as much as you can. So we should talk more about that later.
I will definitely connect with you and incorporate you guys in a big way at the show.
Great. So today's Women's International Day, or International Women's Day.
International Women's Day.
It goes either way. And if there was a manager at a dealership, let's say, who wanted to show his female staff that, hey, I appreciate you being here, what would be some things that he or she could do?
So I want to start by framing my position. For me, women in automotive is an incredible, awesome opportunity and message. But for me, it's kind of that opening the door a little bit. Because it's a hot topic, because we're such a big population, it's easy to talk about this stuff. But me personally, it's a gateway for me to be able to talk about cultures, different cultures, the age, generational differences. There's so many pockets of people that don't feel represented or heard in our space in automotive, especially on the dealership side. So a lot of the topics that I want to kind of bring up with you they're really about solving the culture issues that we have. And it's not just women that are asking for these things. It's people, all different people from all different ages, backgrounds, and so forth. So if you really want, as a dealership manager, owner, to retain some of these women, I think really reviewing your culture is important. It's likely that it's not just women that are finding issue and trying to leave, right? And I know that we talked about this with Jody last week, but there are simple things that you can do, and it starts with listening to them, because each individual is different and they have different needs and different motivators. And I think a lot of times we stick to what we know worked as motivators on the sales floor and as cash incentives, right? But we don't think about, from one of my teams, the biggest thing that I could dangle in front of them was not $1,000. It was a Saturday, Sunday combo off to be with their family. So when I dangled that as the incentive, I got results that I never expected. So really listening and identifying the things that are needs within your team, things like work-life balance, things like flexible scheduling, weekends off here and there, those things are highly motivating.
Yeah, I've never been one for using money to motivate people.
Agreed.
Just find that it just, at the end of the day, it just doesn't work. So I like the days off.
Yeah, and it's amazing what 2 days off can give people time to do. I remember at Basel, one of my first groups, we raffled off not just that weekend away, but something to do with the family, like going to like a Six Flags or something like that. And people were so ecstatic. It was something so simple, so basic, and it cost us little to nothing.
I hope that wasn't the Six Flags in our area.
No, it's Six Flags Darien Lake in New York.
Whew, ours is pretty rough. I don't know if you've ever been to it.
I'll look it up now.
Yeah, stay away.
Yeah, I like some money. That tends to motivate me, but maybe I'm a little weird.
And it still is the greatest motivator. You just have to identify from that team specifically what money, what kind, what ways, what types of behaviors can I get for that money. It's identifying each. I think we oftentimes lead and manage by the team or what we expect the team to be instead of the individuals within the team. And you get a lot more bang for your buck and for your time. It's a lot more efficient when you try to focus on the individual instead of trying to rally the troops and just do the one speech and the one message. Yeah,
that's a good point. So in shifting the culture, it's just listening to everybody. It's kind of
that's the first step.
So, if somebody's going to start to do that, does having a regular like one-on-one session be a good method to get it done, or are there better ways to do that?
I don't think one-on-ones are negotiable. I think if you're managing someone and you're directly responsible for their outcome, we should definitely be having, at minimum, monthly, but definitely weekly if you can, with that individual person. For direct reports, I think not just reviewing what their progress is and where we're disappointed, but I like to do this thing called expectations meetings. There is so much that I found in words. People get hung up on words now more than ever before. And what I found was I was expecting something to come out of someone. And then I was disappointed because they weren't delivering the way that I was expecting it. But when push came to shove and it was almost time to walk out the door, when we would get to the point of frustration, it was because we may have been communicating and speaking to each other, but we weren't always speaking the same language. But then outlining in your expectations meetings quarterly and definitely on onboarding, they know then, okay, Subi expects me to respond to emails regardless of whether I think it needs to be responded to or not. If she assigns me something, she expects me to come to her and she's not going to follow up with me. Little things like that you identify within yourself as a manager are important to express to the people that you're managing. So meetings are important. I would put the hammer down. If that meeting could have been an email, just check in. Don't sit there for an hour just to have a meeting.
Yeah, but it's more fun to have a meeting to plan a meeting.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. And the higher up you go, the more meetings you have about meetings that are coming up.
Well, how else does one justify his or her job?
That's true.
Okay. So let's see. So appreciation comes through listening, step one. Step two, making sure you are then actually speaking to people.
Right.
And
accountability would be next.
Yeah. So
I think it's one of the biggest areas that we miss in automotive, especially in dealerships. We have KPIs or metrics that someone somewhere said in a presentation somewhere, and then we hold our teams accountable to that. But a manager needs to be documenting and following that data to be able to evaluate what the team is doing, what the regions are doing. The example that I would use is digital marketing and the internet director role, because that's the one that I lived in the most. And I think a lot of people pull a report out of the CRM once a month and they say, okay, well, your closing percentage is here and blah, 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 blah. So you're not effective. Whereas if you looked at the numbers, maybe there's duplicates. Maybe there are issues with the region. Is the region performing a certain way? Is there an election cycle that's manipulating the way people are responding to retail? I think we forget. We look so micro a lot of the time that we don't look at the macro and we don't look at the trends. So I think it's really important for managers to understand the difference between micro and macro and evaluate and hold their own data and not just pull it from somewhere that we don't know how things are being defined. But really, I think it's accountability needs to be broken down into bite-sized pieces. What are all the different little things that I'm going to be evaluating? But then how do I make sense of it for the whole team? And then again, going back to the expectations meeting, make sure that person understands how we're going to be evaluating them and what their goals are and how to achieve those goals. Part of accountability is how does someone achieve those goals? 9 times out of 10, when I walk into a dealership and ask an individual on the internet team what their goals are, I will get the same number from everyone because it's whatever's in the pay plan, and I need to hit 17. How many did you hit last month? 4. How many the month before? 7. And how do you think you're going to get to 17? They don't understand it, and a lot of times the pay plans don't even allow them to hit what they need to hit. They don't get the right number of leads and so forth. So accountability is so many things, but I think it starts with those expectations, tracking the data and the metrics yourself to identify what is reasonably to be achieved and then what is a little bit above reasonably achieved to be able to set as goals and parameters. And then it's constantly watching and monitoring and communicating, not once a month.
Yeah, what you're saying a lot of things that are easier said than done for many dealerships.
Yeah.
So it's hard to figure out what goals, especially for an internet department, if you're a GM who never worked in the internet department or even a sales manager who might even be overseeing that department, to understand what is a good goal, what is a smart goal.
I'm so glad you asked that question. So the way that I do things, and first and foremost, if you're out there and you're lost and you don't know where to start, reach out to me. Doesn't cost you anything to create a brain trust. And that's what I did when I was on the sales and e-commerce side of the dealership. I created a group of people that I think are absolutely brilliant that I can reach out to and say, hey, can you take a look at this? Or what do you think about this? And those people always freely gave their time. And the people that didn't, I knew that I didn't see as that expert for me. People like Joe Webb and Bill Playford and, Jeff Kirshner was up there once upon a time when I would harass with different questions. But you identify those people and you reach out to them. So that's, for me, step one of what we're talking about. But then what you do is you keep your own metrics. And I know that sounds a lot more complicated, but a simple Excel sheet that you can just keep updating so you can look at the trends. And instead of taking a national number, like a 12% close that hasn't changed in the last 7 years of what we should expect from teams, regardless of how consumers are actually interacting with us, take a look at our metrics of what we've been doing, what our baseline is, and have we been hitting what we're supposed to be hitting? So what I do is go through and I look at day by day instead of just monthly. And it seems complicated, but when you get it done, it takes about 20 minutes a day to keep updating. And then I can see that on the 15th of the month, we're not where we're supposed to be. And so instead of scrambling on the 28th, I can look and see what sources are or are not being hit, where we're down or up, and modify what we need to do so that we're getting to where we need to go. And then looking at those averages and saying, okay, over the last 10 months, we have consistently been at 10%. So moving forward, let's try to get to 11 or 12. Identify what your means are, what your averages are, and then push your team accordingly, because you never know how your region and your franchise and regional marketing or weather events are affecting the team, and holding the team to unrealistic expectations that someone came up with somewhere is not fair to the team and can often be demoralizing. And I know I'm going really high level, so I say again, if you are confused and you don't know where to start, reach out to me. I will give you my reports and how to use them, and you can always reach out to me again and I will help you with it. There's so many people I can also connect you with that will do it freely and willingly to help you get there, that have done it before. So there are no excuses.
So how does someone get a hold of you, Subi?
Yeah.
Sorry?
How does someone get a hold of you?
Okay. So I'm a little afraid because this is the first time I'm doing this on a Facebook Live, but my email address is subi.gosh, that's subi.gosh at streamcompanies.com. And my phone number is 716-480-6135. I freely give that out to people. I will not pick up after I'm sleeping, because nothing's that important at that point.
We won't throw all that in the comments right now. So.
Actually, I've given it out to people, and people have taken me up on it. I think that I owe everything that I have to people like Bill and Joe and Jeff, who gave me their time freely. And I think that's working together is how we end up improving our industry. I don't understand people keeping things like this a secret, because ultimately, if we help each other, the industry gets better. Our reputation doesn't rank pretty darn close to Congress. And we start showing people the amazing, incredible people that are in this industry and how they want to help people and change their lives with vehicles.
So wait a second. Who's got a better reputation, Congress or car dealers?
Actually, the latest report kind of inched us right above from what I remember. So barely.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Thanks for sharing that. And Robin Wilson posted your email address. And
awesome. Thank you, Robin.
Yep. So I've got one from Christine. So in all fairness, everyone is watching Christine Plunkett, and I talked a little earlier today about some questions we could ask Subi.
I'm so scared.
And she was making the point that there are a number of, or culture goes beyond just what happens in the dealership. It's also between vendors and dealers and manufacturers and dealers and so forth and so on. But especially on the vendor side, she was making a point that so many vendors hire women, and especially try to hire attractive women.
Of course she did. Yes.
And she was saying, could that be viewed as sexist?
Oh, Christine. I think it could be, but I think we also, I'm going to flip this around a little bit, because of our history of booth babes and the likes, and women who went in a certain way, dressed a certain way, trying to get the attention of the dealer. I think we have this connotation that it's completely negative to be an attractive female in this space, walking into a dealership or on the booth floor. And then what I learned is that there are plenty of companies with gorgeous, brilliant people leading the helm. So I think what it comes down to is, if you hire a woman with the sole reason of using her as bait and making her dress and act a certain way, then yes, I think that is sexist. If you hire someone who is brilliant, give them the ability and authority to do their job, and release them into the world to be able to do that, I don't think that that is sexist. I think that is giving people a fair shot. So I think it can be, but it isn't necessarily sexist, because there are plenty of gorgeous, brilliant people out there like Christine, who could walk into your dealership and get your attention, but totally school you on so many things. I actually had some negative comments, not this past NADA, but the NADA beforehand. It was my first time working on a floor, and I was super excited because it was my first time having like a whole team around me for like being an exhibitor, right? Mm-hmm. And people came up and they're like, "Oh, these are just the chicks they have to get it. Like, let's talk to the real people." And when I'm representing a company, I don't always have the snarky comebacks. I really try to watch myself. So I did it the nicest way I knew how. And I'm like, actually, she's the VP of digital marketing right here. And so I just kind of, I think, instead of taking it negatively, try to put a positive spin on it. But a lot of people just don't know. And ignorance isn't always done purposefully to people. So it's the only way I know how to switch it around.
Sorry, I'm laughing at Christine's next comment here. I'm not sure I can ask it, though.
Just ask. It's okay.
She asks, is cleavage a legitimized sales tool?
Never mind. If it's from Christine, don't ask.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, that kills all the rest of our questions.
Right. No. I'm kidding. So Christine and I thought were a really good team when we worked together, because she has more progressive stances and very women's movement kind of stances, but also really just, I don't need to be labeled as a woman. I am brilliant at my job kind of attitude, which I think is awesome. And we need that. And I'm also a lot more, I'm on the conservative side. So I was like, I'd rather wear a turtleneck to go into some of these meetings, whereas she's like, you know what, this is who I am. And I think if that is who you organically are, do it. I remember getting comments in a dealership that I was in that I find power when I wear heels. I also have a bone issue, so I don't know how long I'll wear them. So I wear them as much as I can. And I remember hearing like, oh, here she is with her hooker shoes again. And it totally shook me to the core, because I am a little bit on the conservative side, and it also bothers me when people talk about me. It's something I'm working on. So I took it and I just wore flats. And what I realized is I kind of lost my power there. So that's organically me. I shouldn't change that for someone. If it makes an impression on somebody else, positively or negatively, that's not on me. That's on them. So I think if you are more comfortable dressing a certain way, albeit be professional, don't just unbutton 4 buttons to get attention in my perspective. But as long as you're dressed professionally, I don't think anyone can tell you not to wear that makeup or the heels or the clothes, personally.
Sounds like an asshole, douchebag, big watch wearing jerk. So
it was actually a female.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
That's called jealousy, right?
It's also, I also learned the lesson of dressing appropriately for the area that you're in too. I think I can still wear heels, but maybe a different type of heel for that environment is something that I've done, because I like mirroring where I'm going. I think it sets the tone differently. There's no, there's an even playing field there. And I find when I dress for the environment, I'm more comfortable, which makes the other person more comfortable. So that's my strategy, but to each their own.
Yeah. Be your own person.
Yeah. I think that was if we can take a tangent into that, I think that was the hardest thing for me to learn in this industry. I say that I grew up in automotive because I was a baby when I got in, and I didn't really know myself at that time. But when I came into an independent group, which is a lot less structured than a franchised group that is a little bit more progressive. As old school as we think we are sometimes, franchise is a little bit more progressive in my opinion. And so it was really old school guys that I was around. And what I learned in that is there is no definition of being a woman or a minority or any of those things, or whatever your title is, whatever all the different titles are that you are. There's no definition of that. And I think especially being a younger female in the space, I felt like I had to be something. I had to be one of the guys. I had to be tough. I couldn't cry in front of them. And I put all these ideas of what it meant to be the right person in automotive. To the point where I learned that it's different for other people, but for me, I don't want to be defined as a woman in our space. I don't want to be defined as a minority in our space. I'm just like any one of you trying to be successful in this place. And I don't want to be put in a category. Do those things give me different experiences and different insights? Absolutely. But I actually went off very kindly on a friend who didn't know any better, but would only call me on their show if there was some sort of emotional thing happening. I'm like, listen, I'm good at the emotional stuff, but I have like 99 other things that I'm good at too. And I want you to call me for those things because I don't want to be known as the girl that helps people with their emotional issues, you know? So I think we put a lot of definitions on ourselves. We carry a lot of weight of things that we're supposed to be and we're not supposed to be. But the industry is changing and adapting and evolving to not just one stereotype of a successful salesperson or a successful sales manager. And so we have to, in order to push that change forward, we have to be comfortable with who we are and stand in that and own it and allow that to define us, who we truly are authentically, and all the rest will just come to place.
Yeah, there's couldn't agree with you more there. But there's a comment that's coming up, and this is a question that we wanted to shoot your way. We did the same with Jody as well, and I think, well, let me just ask it. So we have a lot of male dealership operators who ask, "How can I attract more women into my store?" And they're asking from a recruiting standpoint. I think they're also asking from, how do I make female customers feel more comfortable coming here as well? And is that more of a, the same way you would get good talent as you go out and you actively recruit, one-on-one, or is there another way?
There's so many parts to this to unpack. So I'll start with, I think the thing that most of us miss is that we keep looking outside and we don't look inside. And for me, everything boils down to culture. A lot of our main issues boils down to culture, but culture gets thrown in the back seat as this back burner kind of concept. They think it's like this intangible thing, but it all boils down into what's actually happening behind the doors. So I start with asking for exit interviews on anybody leaving. Ask the team that's currently there, how are you liking it? What would you change if you had a magic wand? What are the things that really need attention from us as management? And ask all layers, because a lot of times managers want to protect their turf and they only give you the positive stuff and they make the person leaving look terrible. But if you're having a trend of people leaving and they're not sticking, if you have a trend of women not wanting to be on your floor, maybe it's not that you're not finding them. Maybe you're deterring them. So really, before we go out and recruit this great talent, because we have a tendency of finding amazing candidates and convincing them to give us a shot, but not keeping them, make sure you're doing both at the same time. So really ask those questions. But if you ask those questions, you've got to be prepared for two things. in that bell curve, you got your outliers. You're always going to get crazy responses that you just have to have thick skin about. And you cannot go back to this team and berate them or make them feel like answering those questions that way were stupid. What you have to do is respond to those things. These are things that are set in stone. We can't negotiate on these things because it's a part of who we are. We understand that some of you may feel that way, but let's talk about it. So you've got to answer. If you ask those questions, you've got to answer back. You've got to ignore those outliers and have thick skin. But then go out. And one of the things that I did in my dealership, my last dealership, I was the sales director. I never managed a sales team before, and now I was above the GSMs. It was a terrifying role. And so what I empowered my sales managers to do is go out. Anytime you're going out to eat, keep an eye on the waiters and waitresses. Is there someone that's really surprising you in the way that they're handling last minute changes or, issues with the kitchen or issues with the bill? Is there someone that's remembering things and spitting it back to you without writing it down? Those, if you really look at the skill set of what we're looking for, it's not a sales rock star. Sales rock stars are typically people that bounce around everywhere, that have this wonderful resume of all these things that they've accomplished that we never go back and check if they've actually accomplished. But people that we could hypothetically make into rock stars, let's think about it. We have bad schedules. We have bad hours. They need to earn it. They need to mimic what we say, how we say it to the customer. That kind of sounds like waiters, waitresses, people that we can change their lives with, right? So identifying the skill sets and then finding people like that are great ways to recruit people in. But really it starts with the house. Make sure your house is in order before you do that.
Yeah, always have a strong foundation to build from. Absolutely.
Yep. I loved going out to eat and finding people like that, and give me a call. I think I could change your life. They're used to terrible hours. They're used to horrible, upset customers. They're used to terrible pay. So if we can take them and change their lives, they'll be forever grateful.
You're talking about like waiters and waitresses, right?
Yeah.
Where's some other places?
Actresses, those are great people, especially if you're in heavy actor-actress markets like the tri-state New York area or LA, places like that. People that can front stage, backstage is a psychology terminology that I learned in college, and I visualize it every time I see someone who's like going at their manager in the box because they don't like the numbers they got, and then they open that door, and then it's absolutely, how can I help you? It's that the person that cannot show their frustration to the customer. I think there are a lot of skill sets for that. And telemarketing, people who've called up, like creditors, are really good at taking abuse from customers. So if you have a bad reputation, you want people who are really good at diffusing those situations. So it really is based on the role. But those ones that I just listed out are my top pools to choose from. Try it. I swear. It works.
I've always had pretty good luck with retail stores, clothing stores, or shoe stores.
Oh, yeah. That too, for sure. And then also, I never understood why people didn't do this. At my first dealership, I didn't have a big budget. So anything that I wanted to try, I had to pay out of my own pocket. So I went to the university that I was still somewhat a part of, and I got interns. And I trained them. I spent time with them, but I got 4 interns to do like a 1 full-timer's position that I didn't have to pay for in the standard sense. And they got course credit for it. So you don't always have to pay. And then that's people that you've already trained that you can move into these roles. It's kind of like a great trial period. And it gives great community links. Like if you're investing in these kids, the community sees that. They're going out and talking about it. Just make sure you have a good culture before you do that. Things will happen all the time, but if you have a good foundation, it's going to feed into the community and help you more than just that one employment opportunity. Community engagement is super, super important right now. And there's so many different ways to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, there are two other topics that Christine and I talked about this morning.
Okay.
So this one might not be too what's the word I'm looking for? Well, let's just talk about workplace politics between men and women.
It scares me when you ask some of these questions, Alex.
Well, the next one will be a fun one, but
I think we're having a connection issue. No.
So workplace politics between men and women.
Okay.
That's always a difficult subject when you're involved in it.
Definitely.
Some ways to and do you have any input as to like how to keep things fair?
I hate to beat a dead horse, but I think company culture for me isn't just a fun incentive. It's not just we have fun at work and free pizza. It's about writing the rules. It's about hearing your team and giving them parameters of what's acceptable and not acceptable, and pathways to communicate if something makes them uncomfortable, that they don't feel like they're saying it to their sales manager and their sales manager saying, grow thick skin. You got to be what you have to be in automotive. And I think that's where things go wrong a lot. So making sure that you have open communication, that they feel that if they don't get somewhere in that first layer, that they can go somewhere, that they have ways to talk about it. So just foundationally, I think that's important. Moving on to the actual politics itself, I think for me, this topic goes back to myself. I cannot control what other people do. I can control what I can do. So my tactics and my advice for people dealing with this is the same as any industry or any dynamic, not just the male-female dynamic, but it's identify their language. What is important to them? How do you make them impressed? How do you tick them off? Identifying that road in the middle of being able to communicate with them effectively and making sure you make that heard. For example, if they're keeping you out of meetings, making sure you're very clearly stating, I deserve to be in that meeting because my role requires me to be in that meeting, and making sure it's not just verbal, but visual, making sure you've got evidence of that communication. And then if it doesn't happen, speak up to the powers that be. And I think a lot of times because that structure isn't there, we end up leaving because this place is never going to be like that. But I stand by something that I have said for years. It takes one person to make a change. At my first dealership, women weren't allowed to sell cars. And this was 10 years ago, less than 10 years ago, right? I was told women weren't allowed to sell cars because it causes more trouble. We would get emotional and we would cause issues with women's husbands. Because all of us just, I don't know. I'm not going into that. But now
and then they
I
put
go
a
back
grill
every
on the roof.
year. Sorry?
And then they put a grill on the roof, huh?
No, that was a different dealership. But but I go back every single year for Christmas. And every single year, there is more and more women that work there. And there's more and more women on the sales floor. And it's because I knew that if I wanted something, I had to speak up for it. And we don't fight hard enough, but we also don't fight effectively. So mapping out what I wanted, being communicative, identifying what makes sense to them, and creating that negotiation. And this isn't just a male-female dynamic. Politics are everywhere in every single dynamic. You could, for me, it was simply because I was younger than him in my last dealership. There was a guy that didn't want to have anything to do with me because he didn't feel like I was old enough. So there's all different types of politics. What you have to do is identify what is a win that I can give him? How can I communicate my effectiveness? And this type of stuff takes time. So you've got to be able to chip away at it and not just give up after your very first comment about it. Make sure that there's a process. Say it again, write it again, move it up the chain. And if nothing happens, make some noise. If nothing still happens, pick up and leave. No one's making you stay there. There's so much opportunity in this space with people willing to hear you out and to adapt.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to pick up and leave.
No, don't. I feel like so many people stay too long and far too many people leave too quickly. So we got to meet in the middle, guys.
Yeah. I've had quite a few people ask me, oh, what should I do? I'm just like, listening to your, what you're going through, I'll just pick up and leave.
Yeah. There's always another person out there willing to give you the opportunity that you need. You just have to look for it. Yeah. And you have to be brave enough to raise your hand and say, I am worthy of that. Here is my skill set and here's what I can do. But the biggest advice I would give is that in this industry, we have a tendency to oversell ourselves and then overpromise things that we can't deliver. And then we burn out within 90 days, especially on the internet director circuit. And then the next few months go with not being able to sustain that level of energy and output. And then you're job hopping again in a year. So identify your skills. Do not be afraid to speak up and say, this is what I am capable of, if you give me the authority and the tools to do it. And then clearly state what the actual expectations are. Because again, it starts with communication. And most people that see you and want to give you that shot are going to follow the timeline that you're giving them. But we overshoot sometimes and make it way too hard on ourselves. Yep. Things take time. Don't ever walk into a new department and just change things because of your timeline. You got to monitor and assess before you tweak and then you change. And I think
that's more fun.
Sorry?
That's more fun.
To blow things up?
Yeah, just rip the rug out from everyone. Yeah.
Way more fun to blow things up.
Yeah. So Christine is nudging in the comments here on something that we talked about this morning as well. And it's one that it's a topic I'm quite familiar with because I met my wife at work.
Did you?
Yes. And but it's another scary one, inner relationships in the workplace are can sometimes.
You were asking me some tough questions.
Well, we got to make this a decent show.
Yeah, absolutely.
You better have a damn good response.
I try to, when answering these things, separate my personal opinions because I am a little bit more on the conservative side. I was also engaged at my very first real job, so my story is a little bit different. But ultimately, I think you have to put yourself first. And a lot of times when I see workplace romance, what ends up happening is someone sacrifices their career path for that person. And if you create clear lines of communication, well, I think this is where I think that a little bit of structure never hurt anyone. So making sure that the people that need to know about a relationship, I think is important. So it doesn't feel like you're doing anything behind closed doors is probably a terrible phrase. But also within the partnership, I think it's important to create clear boundaries. And when there's a lot of gray area, where if it's a sales manager and a salesperson and you're getting fed all those things, I think it makes you look bad. And I think it hurts your ability to move up and stand on your own 2 feet. But relationships aren't just dating, right? Relationships are all over the place. You can have a best friend doing the same thing. So I think it's important, no matter what your role you're in, identify again for yourself what your career path is like, what you want to do, and make sure no one can take anything away from you. Because I've seen a lot of women climb the ladder very successfully, or men climb the ladder very successfully, but then they attribute it to somebody else instead of their own worth. And I think that kind of baggage follows you around too. Yeah. So in specifically addressing workplace relationships overall, I think structure is important. I'm a big believer in structure, even if it's little things. I took an independent dealership and we had more structure in there than I would have ever imagined. But simple rules and guidelines, and then boundaries I think is my conclusive answer to that. It may not be as salacious as Christine wanted, but for me, that's how I would answer that. Again, in all fairness, I was never in the dating pool when I started my first job. So what do I know? I don't even know what Tinder really, how that works. So I don't know.
You slide left or something. I don't know.
You swipe one way or the other. I don't know.
Yeah. So take this in a different way. What if we're the employer?
Yeah.
And we have something going on between two of our staff, and that's a really difficult situation now against the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
That's just got
which is why I said structure.
Okay.
If you're in the upper management, I think in dealerships, we are often so afraid of real HR. And I think it's important now more than ever before.
You don't have to be in a dealership to be afraid of HR.
Right. But especially in dealerships, we're very afraid of structuring something like HR. And in my last two dealer groups, we had a very stringent HR world. And that's what really convinced me that this is important. But having rules and regulations, if you have a relationship on the floor, I think it's important to, one, document it. The moment document and say you both are willingly in this relationship, sign here. And there's nothing wrong with protecting ourselves, because the last thing you want to do is get caught up in somebody else's situation.
Is this like a prenup?
Something like that. It's very standard, actually, in many organizations. It's very standard to sign off on a relationship like that.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing I would do is to really make sure that you have rules and guidelines, especially if it's a direct report. Make sure they're not on the same teams if you can. If you can't avoid it, I would write rules. There cannot be favoritism. You have to, if you're giving things out, it has to be done fairly, and we need to see that trail. Things like that can really backfire, not just if there's that relationship and it breaks up, but it causes a toxicity to the rest of the team if there is that unfairness and silent conversations, because people will feel left out, and that is also a legal situation that you can end up in. So structure, policy, and then clear lines of black and white with the people involved. That is the best advice I could give.
Yeah. Black and white.
Especially if you're in California, because that state with their employment rules are insane.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is the hardest state to fire someone, even if they're doing nothing. It took me 8 months to let go of someone, even though they did nothing.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually find a lot of employers actually fear. They don't, it's difficult to get rid of someone. I mean, you've got to have everything noted. You've got to officially write them up so many times to just fire someone anymore. You
have to document everything, and every single complaint has to be tied together. If you're trying to let go of someone for this, it can't be they were late on this day and they didn't submit something if you're letting them go for this. There has to be a trail of connected situations. It's very complex.
Yeah.
But I would like to kind of just touch on the workplace dynamic thing. I think we're entering a universe of Me Too movements and stuff that is stuff, because I'm so professional when it comes to this topic. It's making me nervous already. We're entering a world that is scary on both sides. I hear from men that are afraid to continue to work with the mentees that they have worked with forever, because they're hearing horror stories from their friends. And I have women who are feeling this change in their leadership that won't have a closed door meeting with them or have a meeting one-on-one with them anymore. Yeah. And I would just say, make sure that you communicate instead of, I feel like I've said the word communicate 500 times in this, but it's important. So I'll say
I don't know if you said communicate or culture more.
I'm sure there's a drinking game in there somewhere.
Probably.
But I wouldn't have to say it if you got it right. Oh gosh, I'm totally gonna drink when I watch this back.
It is Friday.
But you do have to, I think, instead of fearing that this person doesn't want to have a meeting with me, be communicative. We don't often speak really directly. It's not just in the workplace. In life in general, we are not direct with what our thoughts and feelings and concerns are. And so we end up festering or walking away from really great opportunities. So I would say, I understand that you might be concerned because of the things that are happening. I want to assure you, and if you need to have documentation, that's fine. If you want to take minutes on our meetings, I'm comfortable with that as well. But I want to make sure that I get your attention, or on the flip side, I want to make sure that everything is done in your comfort level. Just opening up that dialogue is really important. Women in Automotive, we had a really, really powerful HR panel, and we wanted to handle the Me Too movement not with kid gloves, but with the right tone and focus, because it could go off so many different ways. I feel like everyone comes up with a story of, oh, I had this situation when, and that's not what we wanted to turn into. We wanted to have proper HR and legal expertise to be able to help navigate people. So I know that we have that video somewhere, and if you need that information, look at my contact information. Robin Wilson posted, and I will get you that. But we're also having a follow-up to that at the Women in Automotive Conference in June in Orlando. So if you're having any of these types of issues for your organization in recruiting, retaining, come see us. And
where does someone get more information on the conference?
The conference, you can reach out to me, or you can go to www.womeninautomotive.com. And we have all of our information in there. It's June 23rd to the 25th. It's actually on the Disney property this time, which we're really excited about, in Orlando. We have some limited childcare for people so they can bring their families. It's going to be an awesome event.
Sounds like it.
Yep. Yeah. So there are some unanswered questions in the comments. Let's see if we can knock them out quickly. Huh?
All right.
So, I guess they could kind of go hand in hand. They're talking about the vendor side versus the dealer side. Like, it was a weird one when I switched. So on the dealer side, it was always like the guys were getting in trouble for the canoodling that is being asked about here.
Specifically canoodling is what's being referenced?
Specifically canoodling. That is
Okay.
correct. You can guess who's asking that. So like, again, on the dealership side, the guys were sort of the troublemakers. When I came over to the vendor side, I was shocked to see that the women were actually more of the I don't want to call them troublemakers, but they were, getting in trouble more.
Right.
And that was more because it was, it was involving clients.
Right.
So
I would say that this isn't an automotive conversation. It's a conference, away from home, meetings conversation that happens in any industry. My husband's in the tech world. We have had lively conversations about what happens at these types of events with a lot of our friends in a lot of different verticals. I think what it comes down to is this, specifically to the younger people and women. I think a lot of times can see this world that seems insane because we've been taught about professionalism and everything. And when you get to your very first event, you're like, holy cow, this is a party and I'm going to let loose and I'm going to have fun. And what ends up happening is a lot of people don't actively think about the fact that there is a very big gray area between vendor and dealer. You never know which side you're going to flip back and forth between. And I've seen a lot of people make that transition back and forth. Knowing and being aware of the fact that whether you know the people directly or not, in a very close, small industry with the capabilities of social media connecting us, you never know who's watching you. So make sure that you're holding yourself with respect, with being hyper aware of the fact that people are watching. But also, I have made the mistake of being in love with a vendor, like thinking that they were untouchable because I just thought they were brilliant and wanted to follow them around and make sure that I was involved in everything that they were doing. And I hate to admit that I ended up in situations where I was like, do I really want to be here? Is this normal for this industry? And so if you for 1 second feel that way, get yourself out. No one's going to judge you. 1, 2, no matter what you're doing, I think carrying yourself the way that you can look back and say, I did it the way that I wanted to is important. But also, most importantly, in our industry, no matter what, these relationships are going to exist with all different types of people. Be careful of what you say, to whom, who you can trust, because it's a much too small of an industry for us to get away with treating people poorly or saying things that you think are in private. It just never works out that way.
I see the kids have figured out that it's past the 2:00 hour.
Yeah,
you're supposed to be done, Subi.
It was his dad trying to get diapers, I think.
That is a legit reason
to the people that are watching. I am in my 2-year-old godson's office. It's his changing table and his animals that he's hunted on his wall.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if I did that question justice. There's so many different areas that broad topic could go into.
Well, I don't think we turned it into the Jerry Springer special that somebody might have been hoping for.
Do you know me at all? Like, I don't. I try to give the most politically correct answer, but being as authentic to myself as possible. And if I were being really just frank, I would say that I think a lot of women get a really bad reputation because they try to let loose like the guys. And what ends up happening is we just have this double standard, and it's a shame, and it shouldn't happen, but it does. So if you're a woman in this space, be cautious of that. I think that's what it boils down to. And if you're a man in this space, be cautious of that, because you never know somebody else's intentions. And if you have a family and children and a marriage you want to protect, that is entirely on you to make sure you're not in situations where people can create stories, because I've seen marriages fall apart where the people never did anything at all. But inception, right? Social media and inception, those two concepts can get people in trouble. And no matter what situation you're in, if you just hold yourself in high regard and be cautious of your surroundings, I don't think we get in as much trouble as we do. And I don't know if that's answering your question, but I think that's where you're going.
Well, you got a big yes from Christine and a big truth from Robin. So
okay, good.
I'd say you satisfied it.
Sounds good.
All right.
We are after the 2:00, and
yep.
I didn't know if you had any more questions. Quickly.
Oh, we could go on forever, but we'll save the rest for the Women in Automotive Conference.
Yes, we're officially doing that as of right now.
Yeah, so we should talk about how we can highlight that more on Dealer Refresh.
Absolutely. We definitely will come up with an awesome movement.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Well, Subi, thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys for having me and for an incredibly uncomfortable conversation.
That was Alex's fault.
Yeah. No, I blame Christine.
Well, you reached out to Christine knowing full well how she thought. So I blame you.
No, Christine works for me. Let's be clear about that.
We
have a one-on-one every day.
That's on you. You know what she's capable of.
Yes.
That's
why I hired her. That's why I hired her.
Yes, and you are lucky. She is an incredible beast. She's going to kill it.
Yep. She better, damn it.
Brick and Tech?
Brick and Tech, that's right.
There you go.
Where we can be a little more sassy and
right? You can be.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed just sharing and having some frank discussion about topics that are really important to me. And so anytime.
Perfect.
We can do this again, whenever.
Yeah, we'll do this again for sure.
Thank you, guys. And again, 716-480-6135 if you need anything at all.
Thank you, Subi.
Thank you.
All right, see everybody next week.
Bye.
Bye.